Last week, we were treated to two back-to-back survival horror press event extravaganzas, and being a fan of both franchises, I decided I needed to give myself this video as an outlet for my thoughts. What we have here are two very different approaches to remaking two very different legendary horror games from the same era, and my opinions on each of them also couldn't be more different. So Konami went first, and if you don't know, this is the first time that Konami has gone public with any Silent Hill related game announcements since the much lamented cancellation of Kojima's Silent Hills in 2015. I was quite young when the original run of Silent Hill games released, but as an adult, I have played the first three extensively, and PT, the now equal parts legendary and elusive Silent Hills teaser, is one of my favorite games of all time, despite being a 30-minute demo. I have a deep, almost obsessive appreciation for the visuals, stories, themes, atmosphere, and, of course, music of the Silent Hill games. And ever since Silent Hills was cancelled, a piece of my soul has been lost with each passing bogus rumor about the project being revived. With that in mind, you might be surprised to hear me say that I thought this entire Silent Hill transmission event was whack, and I have zero excitement for the future of Silent Hill that was presented. The whole thing came off to me as disingenuous. I do not believe that Konami has turned a new page, that they have a newfound love for Silent Hill, or a super interesting fresh take on the franchise that came to them in an otherworld epiphany. This is still the same antisocial Konami that everyone dogpiled on years ago, and I think what's going on here is far more simple and far more cynical. Based on the reactions to any Silent Hill related rumor, they know the demand for more Silent Hill is at fever pitch. And looking at the success their historical horror game rival Capcom has had with the Resident Evil reboot, they likely feel it's now safe to enter the market with horror games, and that remakes specifically are a surefire bet. Now, of course, almost everything in the gaming industry, and every industry for that matter, is led by a business interest first. But there is absolutely no risk-taking here, no innovation. It is the most boring and uninvested way possible to do this. All of the projects announced are being farmed out. Konami is not investing in themselves, and instead wants to take shortcuts to put themselves in the place that Capcom is right now, after 6 years and multiple games. And it just doesn't work like that. Nothing does. We don't know all that much about the non-SH2 projects, but based on the developers, they're likely smaller projects with smaller budgets. I don't have anything against that, but I just can't help but feel like that's Konami playing it super safe with the money, and some of those projects don't really seem like they need the Silent Hill license to begin with. So Konami's role here, and the new role of Silent Hill going forward, is apparently to just be a licensed brand name to whoever gives Konami a pitch they like, which makes it literally impossible for this new era of the franchise to have any semblance of artistic continuity. This shotgunning approach is not the right choice coming out of the gate after such a long time of dead silence, and it's also so contradictory to what Silent Hill is. Silent Hill is not as big or dynamic as Resident Evil can be. It's a smaller, quieter thing, and that's not to its detriment, that's its strength. It is a much more artful thing than Resident Evil could ever be, and you don't just sit down and workshop it like an engineering problem. It's more delicate than that. When it comes to the Silent Hill 2 remake itself, having it as the leading project tells me everything I need to know about Konami's intentions. Why jump in headfirst with an SH2 remake? Why not a new AAA entry? Why not remake the first game? Well, that's simple, because 2 has all the mind share. It's the most marketable, so just get it out there and sell copies, because it has the highest capacity to sell out of any other option. It would be like if Capcom came out with the RE4 remake in 2017 instead of 7. Who did they get to make this remake? None other than the fucking Bloober team, a name that just oozes with confidence. If you don't know these guys, they've made a name for themselves with middling Twitch streamer bait games such as Layers of Fear, which, ironically enough, heavily copied the concepts of Kojima's PT, a fact that even they readily admit. This is truly a match made in hell, and I think working with Konami on Silent Hill games is exactly what they've wanted all along. Their latest release, The Medium, was lambasted for being a tone-deaf attempt to copy Silent Hill, and even included music from Akira Yamaoka. In retrospect, the medium likely served as a proof of concept for Konami, and working on real Silent Hill, especially a remake, must be a dream for them. You can't be accused of copying ideas from a franchise if you're working on it, and a remake relieves you from a lot of creative and narrative pressure, which is what Bloober is primarily criticized for. I always felt that remaking SH2 would be an extremely difficult or even impossible task, though. The limitations of the PS2 resulted in these stunning visuals that are still gorgeous to this day, with visual crutches like the infamous rolling fog actually making the atmosphere what it is. How do you authentically recreate that feeling with comparatively limitless modern visuals that reveal all? It's a tough question, and maybe a good answer exists, but Bloober clearly does not have it, as what was shown seems like the bare minimum at best. It looks like all of Bloober's other work, a mid-tier budget game LARPing as AAA. Some will be quick to point out that this is a PS5 and PC-only game running on Unreal Engine 5 with a Steam page that lists hefty system requirements. And sure, it might be resource-intensive, but that doesn't mean it looks good. There's a weird mix of low and high quality, as if it can't decide if it wants to look stylized or realistic. It's such a short trailer, yet I could pick out like 5 screenshots that look almost fake, kind of dangerously close to Mario running around in Unreal Engine, Nintendo hire this man territory. Much attention has been given to James's facial expressions, and for good reason. They look funny, they look bad. The town itself is passable, but I don't think they found a way to translate the uniqueness of the PS2 game's look into modern rendering. Overall, it's just kind of cheap and awkward looking to me. We didn't get to see any prolonged gameplay sequences, but they did divulge some details on key changes. The first and most obvious is the removal of fixed camera angles and a shift to an over-the-shoulder perspective, which I have no issue with, though it does put into question if this is going to be a one-to-one remake. The indoor environments were designed with those camera angles, and if you enable a free perspective, they probably don't hold up well. They're saying combat is overhauled, which is a no-brainer as well, but again, how much of the game is being changed? Bloober don't have a great creative track record. This is by far the biggest project they've tackled to date, and the more change there is, the more room there is for missteps. I know they have at least 2 original Team Silent members in Akira Yamaoka and Masahiro Ito, but this is Bloober's game, and I don't see any reason to be anything other than skeptical about it. Based on the robust Steam page and development allegedly starting in 2019, I think it's safe to say that we'll be seeing the results sometime next year, but I'm not sure I'll even check in. Longtime viewers will know that I've been intensely positive about Capcom and Resident Evil's trajectory since the game-changing release of 7 back in 2017. With the exception of 3 Remake, all of these games have been masterclasses in design and have proven that survival horror has a place in the modern era while still maintaining a connection to the core fundamentals of the classics. We've known for a long time that RE4 Remake has been in development, and it was inevitable from the start due to Capcom's Bethesda-like dedication to re-releasing RE4 as much as possible. At the same time, it's also the most difficult and potentially risky remake they could do. While RE4 is perhaps the most well-known and celebrated RE game, and a game that I personally love, it's also the first entry where horror took a backseat to action gameplay. In fact, the success of RE4 is directly responsible for sending the Resident Evil franchise into the Michael Bay action movie death spiral that necessitated this reboot era in the first place. It's definitely not as challenging a project as Silent Hill 2 Remake, but it does run the risk of being not only redundant, but ruining the survival horror reputation that Capcom has worked so hard to rebuild. But unlike Konami and Bloober Team, Capcom's track record shows that they have a deep understanding of what works for Resident Evil, and I think it shows with the very nuanced and balanced approach that they appear to have taken with this remake. After the initial announcement at Sony's last State of Play, they talked about wanting to bring more horror into the atmosphere this time around, and that is readily apparent. A lot of attention has been given to this dog, which many think is the dog you have the option of saving in the original. Here, he's already dead, though this might be a fail state or just an entirely different dog, but regardless, I think it sets the tone here perfectly. We're getting the key ingredients of RE4 that everyone remembers, but re-engineered with the learnings of the RE engine era. The entire introduction seems to have been significantly reworked, a good thing considering how abrupt and nonsensical the originals is. It's now set at night with a mood that's more in line with Village or RE2 Remake. Meanwhile, the village center is instantly recognizable and appears to be geometrically one-to-one, with very similar gameplay sequencing, but decidedly more intense. In the original, the Ganados are a bit passive and don't really look infected a lot of the time. But here they have a savage look and attitude. Just look at Chainsaw Man, he actually looks like a proper horror character now. Visually, it's gorgeous, the character models just keep getting better, and I think the outdoor environments here are improved compared to Village, which is a good thing considering how much of RE4 takes place outdoors. Unfortunately, it's not a true next-gen game, it's still on PS4 but not Xbox One, likely due to an arrangement with Sony, but RE Engine just continues to impress, and they've miraculously married the distinctive visual style and color palette of RE4 with the photorealism of the RE engine. It's hard to tell without going hands-on myself, but the core gameplay appears to be very similar to RE2 and 3 Remake, with ramped-up pacing and a more empowered player character. I'm fine with that, and I think it's what just about everyone expected, but they haven't rested on their laurels, as there are plenty of flourishes shown off that weren't in the original game at all. The knife acts as a consumable when grabbed like in previous remakes, can be used to more easily finish off downed enemies compared to the original, and you can of course parry the fucking chainsaw with it. By far the most interesting addition is crouching and stealth. It's very surprising considering that this is, again, an action-centric game, but it signals to me that we're going to see more reworked sections, if not entirely brand new content, because I can't see how this would work in any of the original levels. But the most exciting change here is how the story and dialogue are being tackled with more seriousness and cohesion. The original game's story is presented in a messy and at times nonsensical way, acting more as background noise and an excuse for the levels to progress. I'm able to take what they're doing here infinitely more seriously, and the presentation is so slick, weaving in and out of cutscenes to gameplay in a very cinematic way that we really haven't seen to this extent in an RE game. At the same time, the B-movie campiness of the original does have its charm, and Leon's dramatic window dive and "bill me for the damages" comment feel like a gentle nod that some of that energy carries on here. My only real concern is the length. Every RE game since 7 has been 8 hours or less, and the original RE4 is almost twice that. Maintaining the level of quality shown off here for that long is challenging and expensive, but I really hope they didn't truncate the runtime, as it's critical to the character of the game if you ask me. Outside of that though, it's just so obvious that this remake is in safe hands. There's so many small details that reassure me as someone who loves the original game but knows its flaws. The only question I really have now is what's next for RE? With the Village DLC, the Ethan Winters saga comes to a conclusive end, and I doubt they're looking to remake 5 or 6. They could do something like 0, and as silly as it might sound, I would personally like to see a remake of 1, but it does feel like 4 Remake closes a chapter for them. It's really a culmination of their work since 7, and I would expect there to be a decent buffer between it and the next RE game. This rebirth of horror games lately has been one of the most interesting developments in gaming for me. I think it really goes back to PT, and then after that, RE7. On top of RE and Silent Hill, we've also got the Dead Space remake, Callisto Protocol, and Alan Wake 2 on the way, and it's kind of crazy. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, likes and subscriptions are greatly appreciated and help the channel grow. Until next time, thanks for watching.